No one could tame the wild horse, until a girl in pink decided to try. Barbara Thompson felt her heart grow heavy as she looked at the papers scattered across the kitchen table. Red numbers leapt off the pages like open wounds. Each unpaid bill was another step toward losing everything she and her late husband had built. Oak Ridge Stables, the family's pride for 40 years, now teetered on the edge of bankruptcy. Then she heard the sound she feared most, the furious neighs of thunder echoing through the barn. Once again, the animal had attacked someone who tried to approach. Barbara rushed to the window and saw 2 workers running from the corral, one clutching an injured arm. "Mom, this can't go on," said Jennifer, her 42-year-old daughter, stepping into the kitchen with her phone in hand. "I just called Michael. He said he'll have to sue us if that horse hurts anyone else." Barbara closed her eyes. Michael was the local vet who had served the area for over 20 years, a patient man who had tried everything with Thunder. But since the horse had arrived at the stables 6 months ago, no one could even get near him. "What do you want me to do, Jennifer?" Barbara turned to her daughter, noticing something odd in her expression. "He was the last gift your father gave me before he—" "Mom, Dad's been gone for 8 months, Jennifer interrupted, her voice harsher than she intended. "We have to be practical. That horse is dangerous and the financial situation is unsustainable." Barbara felt a tightness in her chest. In the months since she'd lost Richard, everything seemed to crumble. The stables, once visited by people from all over Kentucky, now stood empty. The horses sold one by one to pay the debts. Thunder was the only one left, a magnificent animal worth a fortune, but one that had become untamable after Richard's passing. "Grandma, why is Thunder so angry?" The soft voice of Emily made both women turn. The 6-year-old stood in the kitchen doorway, still in her school uniform, her blonde hair tied in 2 braids. In her hands, she clutched her favorite doll. "Sweetheart, you don't need to worry about that," Jennifer said, stepping toward her daughter, but Barbara noticed she avoided eye contact. There was something Jennifer wasn't saying, and it made her uneasy. Emily slipped free of her mother's hand and walked to the window, standing on her tiptoes to see the corral where Thunder paced back and forth, clearly agitated. "He looks sad," the little girl said, her forehead pressed to the glass, "like I was when Grandpa left." The words hit Barbara like a punch to the gut. Emily was right. There was something in Thunder's eyes beyond fury, something she recognized all too well, the same pain she saw in the mirror every morning. "Emily, come here," Jennifer called, her voice tense. "You can't keep thinking about Grandpa all the time, and especially not about that dangerous horse." But Emily didn't move from the window. Instead, she pressed her small hand against the glass, as if trying to reach the animal from afar. "He just needs love," she murmured, so quietly Barbara barely heard. At that moment, something extraordinary happened. Thunder stopped pacing and looked straight at the kitchen window. For a few seconds, the horse stood completely still, as if he could sense the little girl's presence through the glass. "How strange," Barbara whispered, a shiver running down her spine. Jennifer pulled Emily away from the window more forcefully than necessary. "Enough of this nonsense. Emily, go do your homework, and you, Mom, need to stop encouraging her fantasies." Barbara studied her daughter with fresh concern. There was an urgency in her voice that didn't match the situation. Jennifer had always been practical, but never cruel. Something was going on. After dinner, once Emily was asleep, Barbara decided to confront her daughter. She found Jennifer in the office shuffling through papers Barbara didn't recognize. "What are these documents?" she asked, entering the room uninvited. Jennifer quickly stacked the papers and slipped them into a folder. "Just some estimates I requested for the house renovations," she lied, avoiding her mother's gaze. "Jennifer, I raised you. I know when you're lying." Barbara crossed her arms. "What's happening that you don't want to tell me?" For a moment, Jennifer seemed on the verge of confessing. Her shoulders slumped, and she let out a deep sigh. But then the phone rang, shattering the moment. "Hello?" Jennifer answered quickly. "Oh, it's you. No, she doesn't suspect anything yet. Yes, I know the deadline is tight." Barbara felt her blood run cold. Jennifer was speaking softly, but not softly enough for her not to hear. "Jennifer, who was that?" she asked when her daughter hung up. "Just Robert," Jennifer replied, referring to her husband. He wanted to know if you'd made a decision about Thunder. But Barbara knew it wasn't true. Robert had been away on business for 2 weeks and always called his wife's cell directly, never the house phone. That night, Barbara couldn't sleep. Lying in the bed she'd shared with Richard for so many years, she replayed all the strange signs she'd noticed in Jennifer lately. The whispered phone calls, the mysterious papers, the insistence on getting rid of Thunder as soon as possible. It was nearly 3 in the morning when she heard a noise from the kitchen. Barbara got up quietly and crept downstairs, thinking it might be an intruder. But what she found was even more unsettling. Emily was in the kitchen, still in her pajamas, trying to reach the stable key hanging from a high hook. "Emily, what are you doing up?" The girl startled and nearly knocked over the chair she was standing on. "Grandma, I heard Thunder crying," she said, her eyes brimming with tears. "He's having nightmares like I do when I dream Grandpa isn't coming back." Barbara's heart clenched. She too had heard Thunder's distressed whinnies during the night, but had assumed they were just signs of aggression. "Sweetheart, you can't go outside alone in the middle of the night," Barbara said, moving closer to help her granddaughter down, "and certainly not to the stables." "But he needs me, Grandma," Emily insisted, gripping her grandmother's hand with both of her small ones. "I know he does." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now continuing, there was something in Emily's voice that struck Barbara deeply. A certainty, a conviction she wouldn't expect from a 6-year-old. Against all logic, against every safety rule she'd ever taught her granddaughter, Barbara heard herself say, "All right, but I'm coming with you." They dressed quickly and stepped out into the yard. The night was clear, the full moon lighting their path to the stables. As they approached, Barbara could hear Thunder shifting restlessly in his stall. "Emily, I want you to stay right behind me," Barbara whispered, her heart pounding. "If he acts aggressive, we run straight back to the house." But when they reached the stable, something unbelievable happened. Thunder, who had attacked anyone who came near in recent weeks, froze completely at the sight of Emily. The magnificent horse, his chestnut coat gleaming under the moonlight, slowly walked to the stall door and lowered his head. "He wants me to touch him," Emily murmured, stretching out her small hand. "No!" Barbara grabbed her granddaughter's arm instinctively. But Thunder did something that left them both speechless. The horse let out a soft sound, almost like a whimper, and pressed his muzzle against the fence right where Emily stood. "He won't hurt me, Grandma," Emily said with a calmness that startled Barbara. "He just wants a friend." Against all her protective instincts, Barbara released her granddaughter's arm and watched, fascinated, as Emily slowly reached toward Thunder's muzzle. The horse remained perfectly still, letting the little girl's fingers touch his skin with a gentleness Barbara had never seen before. "Hi, Thunder," Emily whispered. "I know you miss Grandpa too." The horse closed his eyes, as if finally finding the peace he'd been searching for all these months. Barbara felt tears streaming down her face. It was impossible, but she was witnessing a miracle. "How did you know?" she asked her granddaughter, her voice thick with emotion. "I feel the same things he feels," Emily replied, still stroking Thunder's muzzle. "When someone we love leaves, we get scared to love again. But sometimes someone comes along who shows us it's safe." Those words, spoken by a 6-year-old, echoed in Barbara's heart with a wisdom she hadn't expected. Emily had put into words exactly what she herself had been feeling since Richard's passing. They stayed there for nearly an hour, Emily whispering softly to Thunder while Barbara watched, still in disbelief. When they finally returned home, Barbara knew her life had changed forever. Not just because she'd discovered Thunder wasn't an untamable beast, but because she'd seen in her granddaughter a special sensitivity that might be the key to saving what remained of Richard's legacy. But the next morning, everything changed again. Barbara woke to the sound of raised voices coming from the kitchen. When she went downstairs, she found Jennifer on the phone, arguing heatedly with someone. "I told you I still need a few more days," Jennifer said in a low but clearly irritated voice. "The situation has changed." "No, she won't agree as easily as we thought." Barbara froze at the foot of the stairs, her heart racing. Who was Jennifer talking to, and what situation had changed? "Jennifer," she called, stepping into the kitchen. Her daughter quickly hung up, her face flushed. "It was just Robert," she lied again. "Jennifer, enough with the lies." Barbara moved closer, determined to uncover the truth. "I'm not stupid. I know you're hiding something from me." For a moment, mother and daughter stared at each other in silence. Jennifer seemed to be fighting an internal battle, torn between confessing or continuing the deception. "Mom, you don't understand how serious things are," Jennifer finally said, frustration heavy in her voice. "The stable's debts are worse than you think. If we don't act soon, we'll lose everything." "And what exactly is this action?" Barbara asked, already dreading the answer. Jennifer took a deep breath before responding. "A buyer has come forward, someone interested in the entire property. He's willing to pay enough to cover all our debts, with some left over for you to start fresh." Barbara felt as if the ground had vanished beneath her feet. "A buyer? And you were negotiating without even consulting me?" "I was just gathering information," Jennifer defended herself. "I wanted to make sure it was a serious offer before worrying you." "Worrying me?" Barbara's voice rose sharply. "Jennifer, this stable is my life. It's your father's legacy. How could you even consider selling it without talking to me?" "Because I knew you'd react exactly like this," Jennifer snapped. "Mom, you're being too sentimental to see reality. Dad died. The stables are going bankrupt. Thunder is a danger. We have no choice left." Jennifer's words echoed through the kitchen like gunshots. Barbara leaned against the table, feeling dizzy. "Who is this buyer?" Jennifer hesitated before answering. "A businessman from New York, William Parker. He wants to turn the land into a luxury housing development." "A housing development?" Barbara repeated, her voice barely audible. "You want me to sell 40 years of my life so they can build houses over your father's memory?" "Mom, please, try to understand." "And Thunder," Barbara interrupted. "What would happen to him?" Jennifer looked down. "The buyer isn't interested in the horses. We'd have to find another place for him." "Another place," Barbara repeated, feeling the anger rise inside her. "You know very well no stable in the area would take Thunder after everything that happened. You're condemning that animal." "Mom, don't be dramatic. There are other options." "What other options, Jennifer?" Barbara shouted. "Do you want me to kill the last gift your father ever gave me?" The silence that followed was heavy and uncomfortable. Then they heard a noise in the hallway and turned to see Emily standing in the kitchen doorway, still in her pajamas, her eyes wide with shock. "Are you selling Thunder?" the girl asked, her voice trembling. Jennifer quickly moved toward her daughter. "Sweetheart, you misunderstood. We were just talking about—" "You're selling Thunder!" Emily screamed, tears starting to stream down her face. "You can't! He needs me!" "Emily, calm down," Barbara said, stepping toward her granddaughter, but the girl ran away. "I hate you!" Emily yelled before racing upstairs. The sound of her bedroom door slamming echoed through the house like thunder. Barbara and Jennifer stood alone in the kitchen, the weight of their argument hanging between them like a dark cloud. "Look what you've done," Jennifer murmured. "What I've done." Barbara turned to her daughter, her eyes burning with anger. "Jennifer, you're the one destroying this family. First you make secret deals behind my back, then lie to me, and now you have the nerve to blame me because Emily found out the truth." "Mom, I'm just trying to save what can still be saved." "No!" Barbara slammed her hand on the table. "You're trying to get rid of a problem you find inconvenient. But this stable, this place, this life we built here isn't a problem, Jennifer. It's who we are." Jennifer sighed, suddenly looking exhausted. "Mom, you don't understand. The bills are piling up. The bank has already threatened to foreclose if we don't pay the loans by the end of the month. I didn't make this up. It's real." Barbara felt her heart tighten. She knew finances were tight, but she hadn't realized it was this bad. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I knew you'd panic," Jennifer replied, her voice softer. "I thought if I could fix everything before you had to worry—" "Jennifer, I'm your mother, not your child," Barbara interrupted. "You don't get to make decisions about my life without asking me, even if you think you're protecting me." They stood in silence for a few minutes, each lost in thought. Barbara was the one who finally spoke. "Have you signed anything with this William?" Jennifer hesitated. Just a preliminary agreement, nothing final yet. And what does it say? That we have until the end of the week to give a final answer. If we accept, he'll transfer the deposit on Monday. Barbara quickly calculated. That gave them just 5 days to find another way. 5 days to save 40 years of history. Jennifer, I need you to promise me something, Barbara said, looking directly into her daughter's eyes. Give me these 5 days. Let me try to find another solution. Mom, what other solution? We've tried everything. No one wants to buy horses this time of year. The maintenance costs are too high. And Thunder. Let me worry about Thunder, Barbara interrupted. After what I saw last night, maybe he isn't the problem we thought he was. Jennifer sighed but nodded. All right, 5 days. But if by Friday you don't have a concrete solution, promise me you'll seriously consider William's offer. Barbara hesitated. 5 days felt like an eternity, and the blink of an eye at the same time. But it was all she had. I promise. After Jennifer left to take Emily to school, Barbara was alone with her thoughts. She knew finding a miracle solution in 5 days would be nearly impossible, but she couldn't just give up. This place was more than a farm. It was the symbol of everything she and Richard had built together. She decided to start by going to the stable to see Thunder. Maybe if she could better understand what had happened the night before, she'd find a clue to save both Oakridge stables and the horse. When she reached the stable, however, she was in for a surprise. Frank, the oldest employee at Oakridge, was standing in front of Thunder's stall but at a safe distance. "Good morning, Mrs. Thompson," he greeted, tipping his hat. "You won't believe what I saw this morning." "What is it, Frank?" "That horse there," he pointed to Thunder, who was calmly eating hay, "woke up completely different. Didn't attack anyone, didn't rear up, gentle as a lamb." Barbara approached the stall, remembering the previous night. Thunder lifted his head when he saw her, but showed no aggression. "This is mighty strange, Mrs. Thompson," Frank continued. "In 30 years of working with horses, I've never seen such a sudden change in behavior." "Frank, I need to tell you something." Barbara decided to confide in the old employee. "Last night, Emily managed to get close to Thunder. She even touched him." Frank's eyes widened. "The little girl? But how?" "I can't explain it. It was like she had some kind of connection with him." Frank shook his head, impressed. "You know, Mrs. Thompson, some folks are born with that gift. My granddad used to say certain people can talk to animals in a language we don't understand." "You think Emily has that gift?" "From what you've told me, and seeing how Thunder is today, I'd say yes." Barbara felt a flicker of hope. If Emily really had a special connection with Thunder, maybe that could be the key to solving everything. "Frank, do you think we could turn this into something commercial?" The man looked at her, puzzled. "How do you mean, Mrs. Thompson?" "I don't know. Maybe offer a different service. Something to do with troubled horses or..." Barbara trailed off. She wasn't even sure what she was thinking, but she felt there was something worth exploring. "Mrs. Thompson, can I make a suggestion?" Frank said after a few seconds of silence. "Of course. You ought to call Dr. Wilson. He works with horse therapy in Lexington. Maybe he can give you an idea of what to do with Emily's gift." Barbara vaguely remembered hearing about horse therapy, but had never paid much attention. Maybe it was time to learn more. "Do you have his number?" "Sure do. He came by a few times when Mr. Richard was alive. He's a good man." Frank went to fetch the number, leaving Barbara alone with Thunder. She stepped closer to the stall, watching the horse, who seemed truly at peace for the first time in months. "What did Emily do to you?" she murmured to herself. As if he had heard, Thunder approached the fence and pressed his muzzle against Barbara's hand. She was startled at first, but then realized the animal was just seeking affection. "You miss him too, don't you?" she said, stroking the horse's muzzle. "Richard brought you here because he thought you could be special." Maybe he was right. When Frank returned with the phone, Barbara had already made a decision. She would call Dr. Wilson and find out everything she could about horse therapy. If Emily truly had a special gift, perhaps there was a way to turn it into a new source of income for the stables. Dr. Wilson answered after a few rings. "Hello, Dr. Wilson. This is Barbara Thompson from Oakridge Stables. Do you remember me?" Of course, Mrs. Thompson, how are you? I heard about Richard's passing. My condolences. Thank you, Dr. Wilson. Actually, I'm calling because I need your help. I have a very specific situation here and was wondering if you could guide me. Of course, what's it about? Barbara quickly told him about Thunder, the horse's behavioral issues, and especially what had happened with Emily the night before. That's very interesting, Mrs. Thompson, Dr. Wilson said after listening. From what I understand, your granddaughter showed a natural ability to communicate with a traumatized animal. Exactly. And I was wondering if this could be useful in some way. Useful is an understatement. Mrs. Thompson, what your granddaughter did is precisely the kind of skill we look for in therapists who work with equine therapy. Equine therapy? It's a therapeutic method that uses horses to help people with various special needs, from children with autism to adults with depression. The horse serves as a mediator in the therapeutic relationship. Barbara felt her heart race. And how exactly does it work? Well, you need specially trained horses, qualified professionals, and the right facilities. But if your granddaughter truly has this natural ability, and if Thunder responds positively to her, you might be sitting on a gold mine. A gold mine? Mrs. Thompson, there's a huge shortage of equine therapy centers in our area. Waitlists are long, and many families have to travel hundreds of miles to find proper care. Barbara could hardly believe what she was hearing. Could the solution to all her problems really be right under her nose? Dr. Wilson, could you come here to assess the situation in person? Of course. How about this afternoon? I have some appointments in the morning, but I can be there around 3. Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Wilson. After hanging up, Barbara felt a mix of hope and anxiety. Maybe there was a way out, but she knew she was betting everything on a single card. The rest of the morning flew by. Barbara cleaned the house, organized some stable paperwork, and tried to mentally prepare for her conversation with Dr. Wilson. When Jennifer returned with Emily for lunch, she decided not to say anything yet. She wanted to hear what the vet had to say first. "How was school today, sweetheart?" she asked Emily, who was playing with her food. "Boring," the girl replied, clearly still upset about the morning's argument. "Emily, about what you heard this morning," Barbara began. "You're going to sell Thunder," Emily interrupted, her eyes filling with tears again. "You're going to send him away." "Honey, no one's sending anyone away," Barbara said, giving Jennifer a meaningful look. "Grandma's trying to find a way to make everything okay." "What kind of solution?" Jennifer asked, suspicious. "I'll explain later," Barbara replied. "First, I need to be sure this will work." After lunch, Emily went to take a nap, and Jennifer left to handle some errands in town. Barbara was alone, waiting for Dr. Wilson to arrive and hoping he'd bring good news. He showed up promptly at 3 o'clock, driving a white pickup truck with veterinary clinic decals. Dr. Wilson was a man around 50 years old, with graying hair and a kind smile that immediately put Barbara at ease. "Mrs. Thompson, what a pleasure to see you again," he said, greeting her with a hug. "I'm so sorry I couldn't make it to Richard's funeral." "Thank you, Dr. Wilson. Would you like some coffee before we go see Thunder? Actually, I'm curious to meet this special horse. Can we head straight to the stables?" They walked to the paddock where Thunder grazed peacefully. Dr. Wilson observed the animal silently for a few minutes, jotting down notes on a clipboard. "He's a magnificent specimen," he finally said. "What's his lineage?" Richard said he came from a stable in Virginia, a competition horse sold after his previous owner passed away. That would explain the trauma," Dr. Wilson murmured. "High-performance horses develop strong bonds with their handlers. Losing them can be devastating. And is it possible to reverse this?" "With patience and the right approach, yes. But tell me more about your granddaughter. Where is she?" "She's still napping. Last night was a long one for her." "I see. Well, while we wait, why don't you show me around? I need to assess if the space would be suitable for an equine therapy center." They spent the next hour touring the stables. Dr. Wilson asked many questions about the facilities, inspected the barns, measured some areas, and took several photos. "Mrs. Thompson, this place has incredible potential," he said, putting away his camera. "The location is perfect, away from the city noise yet still accessible. The facilities would need some adjustments, but nothing too complicated. What kind of adjustments? Mostly safety and accessibility features, ramps for wheelchairs, lower fences for those with limited mobility, a covered area for rainy days. But the essentials are already here. Barbara felt hope growing with every word from the vet. And what about the initial investment? That depends on several factors, but considering you already have the basic infrastructure, I'd say it's possible to start with a relatively low investment. Just then, Emily appeared at the house door, her hair still messy from sleep. She froze when she saw the stranger talking to her grandmother. "Emily, come here, sweetheart," Barbara called. "I want you to meet Dr. Wilson." The girl approached shyly, hiding behind her grandmother. "Hi, Emily." Dr. Wilson crouched to her level. "Your grandmother told me you're friends with Thunder." Emily eyed him warily before answering. "He's not mean like everyone thinks, he's just sad." "And how do you know that?" "Because I can feel it," Emily replied with the simplicity of a child. "When someone's really sad, you can just tell." Dr. Wilson exchanged a meaningful look with Barbara. "Emily, would you like to show me how you talk to Thunder?" The girl glanced at her grandmother, as if asking permission. Barbara nodded, and they walked back to the stable. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. When they neared Thunder's stall, Dr. Wilson stayed a few steps back, watching silently as Emily approached the horse. What he witnessed in the next few minutes left him utterly fascinated. Emily approached the fence, speaking softly to Thunder as if sharing a secret. The horse immediately stopped eating and walked toward the girl, lowering his head to receive affection. "He's telling me he misses the man who used to take care of him before," Emily said, turning to Dr. Wilson. "But he's also saying he likes being here because this place smells like good people." Dr. Wilson stepped closer slowly, impressed by the natural ease of their interaction. "Emily, can you tell if he's in any physical pain?" The girl closed her eyes and placed both hands on Thunder's muzzle. "There's something strange in his left hind leg. It doesn't hurt much, but it bothers him." Dr. Wilson immediately grabbed his bag and approached the animal. To everyone's surprise, Thunder showed no aggression as the vet examined his leg. "Incredible, Doctor," Wilson murmured after a few minutes. "There's a slight inflammation in the tendon. Nothing serious, but it would definitely cause discomfort. How did you detect that, Emily?" "I don't know," the girl shrugged. "I just feel it." Dr. Wilson finished the exam and stepped back from the horse, shaking his head in admiration. "Mrs. Thompson, in 20 years of practice, I've never seen anything like it. Your granddaughter has a genuine gift for communicating with animals. And that means... It means you have the start of something extraordinary here. Emily could become an exceptional therapist, and Thunder, once he overcomes his trauma, would be perfect for equine therapy." Barbara felt tears welling in her eyes. For the first time in months, she saw a real possibility of saving the stables. "Dr. Wilson, how long would it take to set up a functioning equine therapy center?" "If we start with the basics, a few months. But the most important thing is having qualified professionals to lead the therapies. And where would we find those people?" "Well, I could help with the veterinary side and recommend some therapists, but ideally, we'd have someone from the family involved too, someone Emily trusts." Barbara immediately thought of Jennifer. Her daughter had always been smart and determined. Maybe she could be trained to work in equine therapy. "Dr. Wilson, would it be possible for my daughter to take a course to qualify?" "Of course. There are several specialized equine therapy programs. Some can be completed in just a few months." "And what would the startup cost be?" Dr. Wilson did some quick mental calculations. "To begin modestly, I'd say you'd need an investment of around $50,000. That would cover facility adjustments, basic equipment, and training courses." $50,000. Barbara did the math in her head. It was a lot of money, but far less than she'd imagined for starting a new business. And the demand, would there be enough patients to make it viable? "Mrs. Thompson, like I said, there's a huge need in this area. I'm sure you'd have a waiting list within months." Barbara's heart raced. For the first time since Richard left, she saw not just a way to save Oak Ridge Stables, but also to give it a new purpose. Dr. Wilson, could you help me draft a business plan? Something I could present to my daughter. Of course, I can email you an outline later today. I'll include cost estimates, an implementation timeline, and revenue projections. As they talked, Emily kept interacting with Thunder, completely unaware of the significance of what was happening around her. Barbara watched her granddaughter with a mix of pride and hope. "Emily," she called, "Dr. Wilson needs to leave now. Come say goodbye." The girl approached, still shy. "Emily, it was a pleasure meeting you, Doctor," Wilson said, crouching down again. "You have a very special gift. I hope we can work together soon." "Work how?" "Helping other children and adults feel better. Would you like that?" Emily thought for a few seconds before answering. "If Thunder could help too, I'd like that." "Thunder would be essential," Dr. Wilson smiled. "You two would make the perfect team." After the vet left, Barbara sat on the porch, watching Emily play in the garden. Her mind buzzed with possibilities. For the first time in months, she had a concrete plan to save the stables. But there was still one problem: convincing Jennifer to give up the sale and bet on a completely new idea. When Jennifer came home late that afternoon, Barbara was ready for the most important conversation of their lives. "Jennifer, I need to talk to you about an opportunity that came up today." "Mom, I hope it's not some fantasy. We only have 4 days left to give William an answer." "It's not a fantasy. It's a real chance to save the stables and create a steady income." Barbara told her everything about Dr. Wilson's visit, about equine therapy, about Emily's gift, and the project's potential. Jennifer listened silently, her expression unreadable. "Mom, this sounds interesting, but you're talking about starting a whole new business," Jennifer said when Barbara finished. "We know nothing about therapy." "But we can learn. Dr. Wilson said you could take a certification course." "Me?" Jennifer looked surprised. "Mom, I have a job, a family. I can't just drop everything for an adventure." "What job, Jennifer?" Barbara asked gently. "You were let go 3 months ago and you didn't tell me." Jennifer paled. "How do you know that?" "Because I'm not blind. You've been leaving the house every day pretending to go to work, but I know you're just job hunting. That's why you're pushing to sell the stables so fast." Jennifer lowered her head, finally admitting the truth. "Robert's been out of work for 2 months too. We can't even pay our apartment rent. That's why I moved here with Emily." "Why didn't you tell me the truth from the start?" "Because I was ashamed," Jennifer whispered. "You always thought I was so capable, so responsible. How could I admit I failed?" Barbara moved closer and hugged her daughter. "Sweetheart, you didn't fail. We're going through a tough time, but that doesn't define who we are." "But Mom, even if this equine therapy idea works, we need $50,000 to start. Where will we get that kind of money?" "Let me worry about that," Barbara said, though she herself didn't yet know how to secure the initial investment. That night, after Emily went to bed, Barbara stayed awake, planning. She had to find a way to get the money for the project without selling the stables, and she only had 4 days to do it. The next morning, she made a decision that would change everything. Barbara got up early and went to Richard's office, a room left untouched since his passing. She knew she'd have to face that space sooner or later. Opening the desk drawers, she found several unfamiliar documents, old contracts, correspondence, and most importantly, a sealed envelope with her name written in Richard's handwriting. With trembling hands, she opened it. Inside was a letter and some bank documents. "My dearest Barbara, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone and you're facing financial trouble. I know you're too proud to accept help, but I need you to know I didn't leave you unprotected. 15 years ago, when the stables started thriving, I secretly invested in a savings account only you can access. The amount should be enough to keep the stables running for a few years, or to start a new project if you decide to take a different path. I trust your wisdom to make the best decisions. Just remember that the stables were never just about horses. It was always about family, about love, about giving purpose to our lives. Emily has something special. I always knew it. Take care of her and let her develop her natural gifts. With all my love, Richard." Barbara read the letter 3 times before believing what she saw. Richard had left a secret savings account with nearly $100,000. Enough money not only to pay off the debts, but also to invest in the equine therapy project. She rushed to Jennifer's room, who was still asleep. "Jennifer, wake up, I need to show you something." "Mom, what time is it?" Jennifer mumbled, still half asleep. "It doesn't matter. Look at this." Barbara held out the letter and the bank documents. Jennifer read everything in silence, her eyes widening as she grasped the magnitude of what she was seeing. "Mom, is this real?" "It's real. Your father left us a way to start over." Jennifer began to cry, a mix of relief and emotion. "So we can call off the sale? We can call off the sale and still invest in the equine therapy project. But Mom, are you sure? It's a huge risk." "Jennifer, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to answer honestly," Barbara said, sitting on the bed beside her daughter. "Are you happy with the life you've built away from here?" Jennifer thought for a few seconds before answering. "No. Robert and I are always fighting about money. Emily barely sees her father because he's always traveling for work. And I feel like I've lost myself." "And how would you feel if you came back to live here? If we worked together to build something new?" "Mum, I don't even know if I'd remember how. It's been so long since I left." "Sweetheart, you never really left. This place is in your blood, just like it's in mine and Emily's." At that moment, Emily appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas. "Why are you crying?" she asked, worried. "We're crying from happiness, sweetheart," Barbara said, smiling through her tears. "Come here." Emily climbed onto the bed and nestled between her mother and grandmother. "Emily, how would you feel if we could stay here forever?" Jennifer asked. "With thunder too?" "Especially with thunder." "I'd be so happy," Emily grinned. "And Thunder would too." "How do you know he'd be happy?" "Because yesterday he told me he's afraid of having to leave. He said he finally found a real family." Barbara and Jennifer exchanged glances. Even without fully understanding their daughter's gift, they both knew Emily was expressing something deep and true. "Then it's decided," Barbara said. "We'll call Dr. Wilson and tell him we want to move forward with the project." But first she needed to call William Parker and cancel the sale. The conversation was tense. William didn't take the change of plans well and threatened to sue the family for breach of contract. But Barbara, strengthened by the discovery of the secret savings and her daughter's support, stood firm in her decision. "Mr. Parker, the preliminary agreement clearly states we had until Friday to give a final answer," she said, keeping her voice steady. "I'm giving you my answer. I'm declining the offer." "You'll regret this decision, Mrs. Thompson," William replied, clearly irritated. "Without a buyer, you'll lose everything to the bank." "That's not your concern," Barbara shot back before hanging up. Jennifer had watched the whole exchange, impressed by her mother's resolve. "Mom, are you sure you made the right choice?" "I am. And do you know why?" "Because for the first time in months, I feel like I'm honoring your father's memory instead of just trying to survive." The rest of the day was spent planning for the future. Dr. Wilson came back to Oak Ridge Stables, this time bringing detailed materials on equine therapy and specialization courses. He also presented an implementation timeline that seemed both feasible and exciting. "The first thing we need to do is adapt one of the stalls for therapy sessions," he explained, showing blueprints and sketches. "Then you'll need to get certified." "Jennifer, the course I recommended lasts 3 months and can be done partially online." "What about Emily?" Jennifer asked. "How would she fit into all this?" "Emily would be our special therapist," Dr. Wilson smiled. "Obviously, she's too young to officially practice, but her natural ability would be an incredible advantage. Imagine the impact she could have on children with autism or other communication disorders." "But would it be safe for her?" "Absolutely. She would always work under supervision and only with age-appropriate patients. In fact, children often connect with other kids in ways adults can't." As the days passed, the project took shape. Jennifer enrolled in the equine therapy course, Barbara started planning the necessary renovations, and Emily continued her daily routine of talking to Thunder. It was during one of these conversations that Emily made a discovery that changed everything. "Grandma," she came running into the house one Thursday afternoon, "Thunder told me something really important." "What is it, sweetheart?" "He said he knows other horses who are sad like he was, and that maybe we could help them too." Barbara stopped what she was doing. "What do you mean, Emily?" "There's a stable not too far from here with horses no one can ride. Thunder said they're hurt inside, just like he was." Jennifer, who had been listening from the kitchen, joined them. "Emily, horses can't tell you where other horses are," she said, trying to be gentle but realistic. "Yes, they can," Emily insisted. "They communicate in a way we don't understand." "But I do." Barbara exchanged a thoughtful look with Jennifer. Ever since Emily had shown her special ability with Thunder, she was willing to believe in possibilities she once would have dismissed as absurd. "Emily, would you know how to get to this place? Thunder can take me there." "Honey, you can't ride Thunder," Jennifer said, alarmed. "Why not? He lets me touch him, and he said he'd take me anywhere." Dr. Wilson, who had arrived for a routine visit, overheard part of the conversation. "What are you all talking about?" Barbara explained Emily's latest revelation. Dr. Wilson listened carefully, asking specific questions about what the girl had said. "You know, there's a stable about 12 miles from here that's having serious trouble with traumatized horses," he mused. "The owner is Michael Johnson. He bought several animals from a bankruptcy auction, but found most have severe behavioral issues. Do you think that's what Emily's talking about?" "It's possible. And if it is, maybe we can kill two birds with one stone." "How so?" "If Emily can help Michael's horses, it would be the perfect demonstration of her abilities, and Michael could become a partner in our project." Jennifer was still skeptical. "Dr. Wilson, with all due respect, we're talking about a 6-year-old riding a horse that was considered untamable just days ago." "Actually, Jennifer, I was thinking of a more cautious approach," Dr. Wilson replied. "What if we went to Michael's stable to assess the situation? Emily could observe the horses from a safe distance. If she really has insights into their emotional state, it would be an important validation of her gift." Barbara liked the idea. "Would Michael agree to a visit?" "I'm sure he would. He's desperate to find a solution. Some of the horses he bought are worth a lot of money, but they're impossible to work with." They arranged to visit Michael Johnson's stables the next day. Barbara felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation. If Emily could really help other horses, it wouldn't just validate the girl's gift, it would also open incredible possibilities for the equine therapy project. That night, Barbara had trouble sleeping. She felt she was on the verge of something extraordinary, but she also feared she was betting too much on a 6-year-old child. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. The next morning, Dr. Wilson arrived early in his pickup truck. Emily was excited at the prospect of meeting new horses, while Jennifer still seemed hesitant about the whole situation. Michael Johnson's stables were in a more mountainous region, surrounded by breathtaking landscapes that contrasted with the tense atmosphere they felt as soon as they arrived. From a distance, they could hear agitated whinnies and the sound of hooves striking wood. Michael greeted them at the gate, a man in his 50s with a tired and worried expression. "Dr. Wilson, good to see you. And these must be the people you told me about." "Michael, this is Mrs. Barbara Thompson, her daughter Jennifer and granddaughter Emily. It was Emily who gave us the clue about your horses." Michael looked at the girl curiously. "Really? And how did such a little girl know about my problems?" "Thunder told me," Emily replied matter-of-factly. Michael seemed confused, but Dr. Wilson quickly explained Emily's special abilities and the transformation she had brought about in Thunder. "Well, if she can do anything for my horses, I'd be eternally grateful," Michael sighed. "Come on, I'll show you the situation." They walked to an area where 5 horses were kept in separate stalls. The contrast with the peaceful atmosphere of Oak Ridge Stables was shocking. The animals seemed restless, some pacing back and forth, others kicking at the fences. "I bought these horses at an auction 2 months ago," Michael explained. The previous owner had passed away and the family just wanted to get rid of the animals quickly. I thought I was getting a good deal, but I found out they all have severe trauma. Emily approached the stalls slowly, studying each horse carefully. She said nothing for several minutes, just standing there as if absorbing invisible information. This one, she pointed to a black horse that seemed particularly agitated. He's really angry because someone hurt him, but it wasn't out of cruelty. It was someone who didn't know how to take care of him properly. Michael's eyes widened. How could you know that? This horse came from a stable where the owner was very elderly and couldn't care for the animals properly anymore. And this one, Emily moved to another stall where a brown mare stood in the farthest corner. She's afraid because she lost a baby and thinks she'll lose all the friends she makes. Dr. Wilson quickly checked his notes. Michael, did this mare have a foal that was stillborn? Yes, about 6 months ago. How could she know that? Emily continued her assessment of the horses, describing each animal's emotional state with eerie accuracy. In some cases, she even mentioned physical details only a veterinary exam could detect. This one has a bellyache that comes and goes, she said about a bay mare. And this one, she pointed to a chestnut horse, is afraid of tall men wearing hats because someone like that was cruel to him. Michael automatically removed the hat he was wearing. Incredible. I've really struggled with him. I thought it was just his temperament. Emily, Barbara said, approaching her granddaughter, do you think you could help these horses like you helped Thunder? The girl thought for a few seconds before answering. Yes, but it would take longer. They've been hurt for a long time, and they still don't trust adults. But could you earn their trust? I think so, especially if Thunder came along to explain that you're good people. Michael watched the scene, completely fascinated. Dr. Wilson, is what I'm seeing real? Michael, I had trouble believing it myself. But I've seen Emily turn an untamable horse into a gentle animal in just a few days. And what exactly are you proposing? Dr. Wilson looked at Barbara, who nodded. Michael, we're setting up an equine therapy center at Oak Ridge Stables. The idea would be to form a partnership. Emily would work with your horses to rehabilitate them emotionally, and in return, you'd lend us some of them for our therapy program. Besides, Barbara added, you could become our supplier for special horses. I imagine other stables in the area have similar problems. Michael didn't need to think long before answering. I accept. In fact, more than just accepting, I'm excited. If you can rehabilitate these horses, I could specialize my stable in buying and recovering traumatized animals. It'd be an untapped market niche. And is there a market for that? Dr. Wilson, you have no idea how many valuable horses are considered lost causes due to emotional trauma. If we can develop a reliable rehabilitation method, we'll be sitting on a gold mine. Emily, who had been listening to the adults, approached Barbara. Grandma, can I say something? Of course, sweetheart. The horses are saying that if we help them, they'll help a lot of sick people get better. They want to have an important job. Emily's words moved everyone present. There was something deeply touching about the idea that traumatized animals could find healing by helping other beings in need. Michael, Dr. Wilson said, how about we start with a pilot project? Emily could come here twice a week to work with your horses. We'd document the whole process, and if the results are positive, we'd formalize the partnership. Perfect. What about the costs? For now, there wouldn't be any, Barbara replied. Consider it a mutual investment. If it works, we all benefit. They spent the rest of the morning planning the details of the partnership. Michael showed them his facilities, which were well suited for the work Emily would need to do. Dr. Wilson explained the necessary safety protocols, and Jennifer began envisioning how the joint project could accelerate the development of the therapy center. Mom, Jennifer said on the way back, I was skeptical about this whole special gift thing with Emily. But after what I saw today, I have to admit there's something real happening here. You have no idea how relieved I am to hear that, Barbara replied. I was starting to think I was going crazy. Grandma, can I ask something? Emily said from the back seat. Of course, sweetheart. Why do adults find it so hard to believe we can talk to animals? It's not that different from talking to people. The question left both Barbara and Jennifer speechless. There was a simple logic in Emily's words, that exposed the unnecessary complexity adults created around things that might be more natural than they realized. "You're right, sweetheart," Jennifer finally said. "I think adults sometimes forget to believe in special things. So will you try to remember?" "We will," Barbara promised. That afternoon, after they returned home, Barbara sat down with Jennifer to discuss the next steps. The project had grown far beyond what she had initially imagined, and now they needed more detailed planning. "Jennifer, I need to know if you're truly willing to dive headfirst into this project." "Mom, to be honest, I'm scared. It's a huge responsibility, and I have no experience with any of this. But are you willing to try?" Jennifer looked out the window, where Emily was playing in the garden, while thunder grazed near the fence, as if watching the girl. "You know, Mum, I've spent the last few years feeling lost, working jobs that didn't fulfill me, living a life that never really felt like mine. Maybe this is my chance to figure out who I really am." "And Robert? How will he react to all this?" "Robert will have to understand that our family needs a fresh start. If he wants to be part of it, he's welcome. If not, well, maybe it's time to reevaluate our relationship." Barbara was surprised by the determination in her daughter's voice. Over the past few days, she had watched Jennifer transform from an insecure, desperate woman into someone with purpose and direction. "So, are we moving forward?" "We're moving forward." That night, they called Dr. Wilson to say they wanted to speed up the project timeline. He was thrilled by their enthusiasm and promised to send all the materials Jennifer needed to start her equine therapy course the following week. "Oh, and Mrs. Thompson," Dr. Wilson added before hanging up. "Michael just called me. He's already gotten 3 calls from other breeders in the area asking about rehabilitating traumatized horses. Word seems to have spread fast." "Is that good or bad?" "It's great. It means there's real demand for the services you plan to offer." Barbara hung up the phone feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. Everything was happening so quickly, but for the first time in months, she felt she was on the right path. The next few days flew by in a whirlwind. Jennifer started her online equine therapy course, showing a natural aptitude for the subject that even surprised herself. Barbara began the necessary renovations at Oak Ridge Stables, always consulting Emily about what the horses thought of the changes. Emily made her first official visit to Michael's stables on a Monday morning. The results were even more impressive than anyone expected. In just 2 hours, she managed to get close to 3 of the 5 troubled horses, and one of them, the mare who had lost her foal, even ate from her hand. "It's impossible," Michael murmured to Dr. Wilson as they watched the scene. "I've tried to get near that mare for 2 months with no luck." "Michael, you're witnessing something that will revolutionize our understanding of interspecies communication," Dr. Wilson replied, filming everything with his camera. Emily worked with each horse individually, using an approach that seemed more like intuition than technique. She would stay silent for long stretches, just observing the animal before slowly approaching and beginning to talk in a soft voice. "This one is telling me he's afraid of being alone at night," she explained about the black horse. "Maybe if you put him in a stall near the others, he'd feel calmer." Michael made the change immediately, and the results were visible within hours. The horse, who used to spend nights whinnying anxiously, now slept peacefully. "Emily," Dr. Wilson said to the girl at the end of the session, "do you think you could teach others to do what you do?" "I don't know," she answered honestly. "It's hard to explain how a feeling feels. But could you try to show your mum?" Emily looked at Jennifer, who watched everything with growing fascination. "I can try, but Mommy will have to stop thinking so much and start feeling more." Emily's remark made everyone laugh, but it also revealed a deeper truth about the difference between the analytical adult mind and the natural intuition of children. On the way home, Jennifer asked Emily how she knew what the horses were feeling. "It's like when you're sad, and I know without you having to say anything," Emily explained. "The horses do the same thing, only stronger." "Stronger how?" "They don't lie like people sometimes do. When they're sad, they're really sad. When they're happy, they're really happy." Jennifer reflected on those words for the rest of the day. There was a simplicity in Emily's perspective that was both profound and freeing. That night, Robert called from New York, where he was attending job interviews. Jennifer told him about the recent developments, expecting resistance or skepticism. To her surprise, he showed genuine interest. "Jennifer, you sound more excited than you've been in years," he said. "If this project can bring back the woman I fell in love with, I'm all for it. Even if it means we might have to move permanently to the stables, especially because of that. Emily is growing up without me, and I feel like I'm missing the most important moments of her life. Maybe it's time we prioritize family over career." The conversation with Robert removed the last obstacle Jennifer felt to fully committing to the project. The next morning, she threw herself into her studies with renewed energy. It took just 2 weeks of regular work for Emily to completely transform the atmosphere at Michael's stables. The 5 horses, once considered untamable, now accepted human presence and showed clear signs of emotional recovery. "Dr. Wilson," Michael said one Thursday afternoon, "we need to formalize this partnership as soon as possible. I've already gotten 6 requests from other breeders for Emily to work with troubled horses." 6 requests? And these aren't small-time breeders. People from Virginia and Tennessee are interested. If we can scale this process, we're looking at an extraordinary business opportunity. Dr. Wilson relayed the information to Barbara, who was both excited and concerned. "Dr. Wilson, we don't want Emily to become a circus act. She's still a child." "I completely agree. But think about the business potential. If we can document and systematize her method, we could train others with similar abilities. Emily would be the pioneer, but not necessarily the only one." "And are there others with similar abilities?" "I believe so. There are probably many children with similar gifts who've never had the chance to develop them properly." The conversation planted a seed in Barbara's mind. Maybe the project could be even bigger than she'd imagined. Maybe they could create not just an equine therapy center, but a training facility for people with special abilities to communicate with animals. That evening, she talked to Jennifer about expanding the project. "Mom, don't you think we're dreaming too big?" "Jennifer, a month ago I was about to lose everything. Today we're planning something that could revolutionize equine therapy in the United States. If that's not dreaming big, I don't know what is." "But what if it doesn't work? What if we're betting everything on an ability we can't even explain scientifically? Sweetheart, 3 weeks ago, Thunder was an untamable horse. Today, he's gentle as a lamb. 2 weeks ago, Michael had 5 troubled horses that were costing him a fortune. Today, he has 5 animals in recovery. The results speak for themselves." Jennifer nodded, but Barbara could see she still had reservations. "Jennifer, can I ask you something? What's really worrying you?" Jennifer sighed before answering. "Mom, I'm afraid we're putting too much pressure on Emily. She's only 6. What if all this responsibility is too much for her?" "That's a valid concern," Barbara admitted. "But have you asked Emily how she feels about it?" "Actually, no." "Then how about we ask her?" They called Emily, who was playing with dolls in the living room. "Emily, Mommy wants to ask you something important," Barbara said, as the little girl joined them. "What is it?" "Sweetheart, do you enjoy helping the horses?" "So much," Emily replied immediately. "It's my favorite thing to do." "And you don't feel tired or pressured?" Emily seemed confused by the question. "Why would I feel pressured? The horses like it when I talk to them, and I love making them feel better. But what if lots of people start asking you to help other horses? You wouldn't have time to play and just be a kid." Emily thought for a few seconds before answering. "Mommy, helping the horses is like playing for me. It's the game I love most. And what if there comes a day when you don't want to do it anymore? Then I'd tell you. But I don't think that day will come. Horses will always need help, and I'll always want to help." The simplicity and conviction in Emily's voice dissolved Jennifer's last worries. "Okay, sweetheart, I just wanted to make sure you were happy." "I'm very happy," Emily smiled. "Can I go play now?" After Emily left, Jennifer turned to Barbara. "I think I was projecting my own insecurities onto Emily. She seems genuinely happy and fulfilled with what she's doing. And what about you, Jennifer? Are you happy with the direction your life is taking?" "For the first time in years, yes. I feel like I've finally found something with real purpose. It was a Friday when everything changed again. Barbara was in the kitchen preparing lunch when she saw an unfamiliar car pulling up to the stables. A well-dressed man stepped out of the vehicle and walked to the front door. When Barbara answered, the man introduced himself as Dr. Harrison, a researcher from Kentucky State University. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm here because I've heard about a girl with extraordinary abilities with horses. I'd very much like to meet her." "And how did you hear about this?" "Dr. Wilson told me. We were college colleagues, and he thought I'd be interested from a scientific perspective." Barbara felt an alarm go off in her mind. The last thing she wanted was for Emily to become a scientific study subject. "Dr. Harrison, my granddaughter is not a lab experiment." "Oh no," he quickly clarified. "That's not it at all. In fact, I'm here because I believe her abilities could be officially recognized and validated. It would give your project much more credibility." "How so?" "Well, if we can scientifically document Emily's abilities, it could open doors to university funding, partnerships with research institutions, even international recognition." Barbara wasn't sure whether to feel excited or worried about the proposal. "Dr. Harrison, may I call my daughter to join this conversation?" "Of course." When Jennifer joined them, Dr. Harrison explained his proposal again. He wanted to document Emily's abilities through controlled tests, detailed recordings, and behavioral analyses. "And what would be the benefit for Emily and our project?" Jennifer asked. "First, scientific validation. If we can prove that her abilities are real and measurable, it would eliminate any skepticism about your project. Second, access to resources. The university could provide funding, equipment, and technical expertise. And the risks? Minimal. All tests would be conducted right here in the natural environment where Emily feels comfortable. Nothing invasive or stressful." Barbara and Jennifer exchanged glances. The offer was tempting, but they needed to consider every angle. "Dr. Harrison, can we have some time to think about this?" "Of course, but I should mention there's some urgency. We've received word that other researchers are also interested in similar cases. If we want to ensure Emily is studied in the most respectful and beneficial way possible, it would be best to act quickly." After Dr. Harrison left, Barbara and Jennifer sat down to discuss the proposal. "Mom, what do you think?" "I'm torn. On one hand, scientific recognition could really open doors. On the other, I'm afraid it might turn Emily into a celebrity, which wouldn't be good for her. What if we set conditions? Like, any study has to be done discreetly, without publicity, and always with our consent." "That's a possibility, but I think we should talk to Emily before making any decisions." They called Emily and explained in terms she could understand what the researcher had proposed. "He wants to film you talking to the horses to show other scientists that it's real." "Why does he need to prove it's real?" Emily asked. "Because some adults only believe things when other important adults say it's true," Jennifer explained. "That's kind of silly," Emily remarked. "But if it helps more horses, I don't mind." "Are you sure you don't have to decide right now?" "I'm sure, but can I make one condition?" "What condition?" "That Thunder gets to be part of it too. He'd like to show people how happy he is now." Emily's answer moved Barbara deeply. Even in a situation that might intimidate a child, Emily was thinking of the horse's well-being. "All right, sweetheart. We'll accept the offer, but with all the conditions we think are necessary." The next day, Dr. Harrison returned with a small team of researchers and filming equipment. Emily showed no nervousness, treating the whole situation like a new and interesting game. The tests lasted 3 days and were far more revealing than anyone had expected. Emily not only demonstrated her abilities with Thunder and Michael's horses, but also revealed skills no one had noticed before. During one test, Dr. Harrison brought in an unfamiliar horse that had been rescued from abuse. Emily approached the animal and after a few minutes of silent observation said, "This horse has a lot of pain in his right leg and he's been hungry for a long time, but mostly he's scared of men with beards." Dr. Harrison, who had a beard, immediately stepped back. A subsequent veterinary exam revealed an injury in the right leg that hadn't been detected before, and research into the horse's history confirmed he'd been mistreated by a bearded man. "This is absolutely extraordinary," Dr. Harrison murmured to his colleagues. She doesn't just detect emotional states, she seems able to identify physical problems and specific traumas too. The test results were so impressive that Dr. Harrison decided to fast-track the documentation process. Mrs. Thompson, I'd like to propose something different from what we initially agreed on. What's that? Instead of just documenting Emily's abilities, I'd like to suggest a broader partnership. The university would fully fund your equine therapy center in exchange for it becoming the official research hub for interspecies communication. Would that mean Emily would be constantly studied? Not exactly. It would mean the center becomes a place for research and training, but always prioritizing Emily's well-being and the success of the therapeutic project. In fact, I believe this would bring much more credibility and resources to you. Barbara felt she was facing a unique opportunity, but also an enormous responsibility. Dr. Harrison, I need to discuss this with my family before giving an answer. Of course, but I can tell you up front that the funding would be substantial. We're talking over $500,000 for the full implementation of the project. $500,000. It was more money than Barbara had ever seen in her entire life. It would be enough not only to create the equine therapy center of her dreams, but also to secure the financial future of the whole family. That night, after the researchers left, the family gathered for the most important discussion of their lives. "Mom, $500,000, Jennifer said, still in disbelief. With that money, we could create something truly revolutionary. But at what cost? Barbara questioned. Emily would basically become the university's property. Not necessarily. We could negotiate the contract terms to ensure she's protected. And Emily, how does she feel about all this? They looked at the girl who was playing with thunder in the garden, completely unaware of the magnitude of the decisions being made about her future. I think we should ask her, Jennifer said. They called Emily over and explained in the simplest way possible what the university was proposing. They want our home to become a special school where you teach others how to talk to horses, Barbara explained. Would there be lots of horses here? Lots. And other kids who like horses? Probably, yes. Emily thought for a few minutes before answering. I'd like that. But only if Thunder can be the head teacher. He knows more about horses than anyone. Emily's answer once again showed her natural wisdom and her ability to see beyond the complications the adults were creating. So, is it decided? Barbara asked. It's decided, Jennifer confirmed. The following Monday, they called Dr. Harrison and accepted the proposal, but with several conditions to protect Emily and ensure the main focus remained on equine therapy, not research. The next few months passed in a whirlwind of activity. Oak Ridge Stables was transformed into a state-of-the-art facility with spaces for equine therapy, classrooms for therapist training, and research areas. Emily continued working with traumatized horses, but now under scientific supervision that documented every breakthrough. Robert returned from New York and joined the project as an administrator, discovering he had a natural talent for managing the logistical complexities of an operation that size. Jennifer completed her equine therapy certification and became the center's lead therapist, working side by side with Emily to develop treatment protocols that combined traditional techniques with her daughter's special abilities. Frank was promoted to horse supervisor and proved to be an exceptional instructor for the new staff hired as the project grew. The center began accepting patients after 6 months of preparation. The waiting list grew quickly, not just for equine therapy sessions, but also for the therapist training program where people came to learn the methods Emily had developed. They also found other children with similar abilities, confirming Dr. Harrison's theory that Emily's gift wasn't unique, just rare and underdeveloped in most people. 1 year after that morning when Barbara thought she might lose everything, Oak Ridge Stables had become a national reference in equine therapy and animal communication. Emily, now 7 years old, remained a normal child who went to school and played with friends. But she was also an exceptional therapist who had helped hundreds of horses and dozens of human patients. Thunder became the most famous horse in the United States, not for being untamable, but for being the perfect example of how love and understanding can heal deep trauma. He worked primarily with autistic children, displaying patience and kindness that moved everyone who witnessed his sessions. The project expanded to other species as well. Emily discovered her abilities worked with dogs, cats, and even farm animals, opening possibilities for even more diverse animal-assisted therapies. Michael Johnson became the main horse supplier for the center, specializing in purchasing and rehabilitating traumatized animals. His stables flourished like never before, and he became one of the strongest advocates for the methods developed by Emily. Dr. Wilson continued as the head veterinarian of the project, documenting each case and developing protocols that were being adopted by equine therapy centers across the country. Dr. Harrison coordinated the scientific research, which had already resulted in several publications in prestigious international journals. Emily's work was revolutionizing the scientific understanding of interspecies communication. But perhaps the most important outcome was what had happened to the family itself. Barbara had not only found a way to save Richard's legacy, but had expanded it in ways he could never have imagined. She became the center's executive director and discovered a passion for administration she never knew she had. Jennifer found her true calling and achieved professional fulfillment in a way she had never experienced in her previous jobs. She and Robert rebuilt their marriage on shared purpose and family values. Robert found meaning in work that directly contributed to others' well-being, something his past careers had never provided. And Emily? Emily simply kept being Emily, a special little girl who talked to horses and helped people feel better, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The end. What did you think of this heartwarming journey of overcoming challenges and discovery? Tell us in the comments which part of the story touched you the most, and whether you believe there are truly people with special gifts like Emily's. Leave a like if this story brought warmth to your heart, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories celebrating family strength and the power of love. Your presence here makes all the difference.